Welcome back to our space of reflection. Today, inshallah, we will explore a profound truth that separates those who merely speak from those who become vessels for divine wisdom, the sacred art of allowing Allah to guide your words. If you are on a journey to find peace, sakina, and draw closer to Allah, I invite you to like this video and subscribe, because by the end of our time together, you may see your struggles with communication not as a burden, but as a direct path to His mercy, His rahmah. And before we delve deeper, I would be honored to know who is joining this circle of reflection. Please take a moment to write in the comments from which city or country you are watching. It is a beautiful reminder that this ummah is vast and connected, a global community of hearts all seeking the same thing, the sakina, profound peace, and barakah, divine abundance that only Allah can provide. Have you ever stood in a moment when words were demanded of you, yet your tongue felt bound by invisible chains? Perhaps it was when a dear friend sought your counsel in their darkest hour, or when your child looked to you for wisdom that seemed beyond your reach, or even in the sacred solitude of your dua, when you needed to pour your heart before Allah but found only emptiness where eloquence should dwell. This is the silent battle that rages behind every word we speak, every piece of advice we attempt to give, every prayer we struggle to form. It is not the battle of vocabulary or education. It is deeper, more profound. It is the battle between a heart that yearns to be a vessel for divine wisdom and a nafs, an ego that insists on being heard. Your words feel hollow because they emerge from a hollow space. They sound mechanical because they are manufactured by a mind disconnected from its source. They lack weight because they carry the burden of your fears, your need to appear wise, your desperate attempt to fill the silence with anything, rather than allowing Allah to fill that silence with His guidance. But there is a way that our beloved Prophet Musa, alayhi salam, showed us in his most vulnerable moment, when he stood before the greatest oppressor of his time, facing a task that seemed impossible. He did not ask Allah for clever arguments or powerful rhetoric. Instead, he made a supplication that reveals the secret of divinely guided speech. "O my Lord, expand for me my chest, ease for me my task, and untie the knot in my tongue, that they may understand my speech." Notice the order of his request. First, the expansion of the chest, the heart. Only then, the loosening of the tongue. Musa, peace be upon him, understood what we have forgotten in our haste to speak, to advise, to appear knowledgeable. True eloquence begins not with the tongue, but with the state of the qalb, the heart. Imam al-Ghazali taught us that the heart is like a mirror. When it is polished through acts of worship, through dhikr, through the painful but necessary process of tazkiyah, it becomes capable of reflecting divine light and wisdom. But when it is clouded by the dust of sins, both seen and unseen, when it is rusted by spiritual negligence, by the diseases of pride and envy and the love of this world, then it can only reflect back the darkness and confusion that lies within. This is why the words that emerge from our mouths are not merely sounds we make. They are a diagnosis. They reveal the state of our inner landscape with startling accuracy. When we speak from anxiety, our words carry anxiety. When we speak from ego, our words feed ego. When we speak from emptiness, our words create more emptiness in those who hear them. But when we speak from a heart that has been expanded by Allah's mercy, when our words flow from a source that has been purified and connected to the divine, then something miraculous happens. We become not the source of wisdom, but its channel, not the fountain, but the stream that carries pure water from the eternal spring. Today's journey is not about learning techniques of public speaking. It is about the sacred process of polishing that inner mirror, so that when you speak, it is no longer your anxiety or your nafs speaking, but wisdom guided by Allah Himself. This is the true mark of those who are chosen, not by birth, but by the conscious choice to purify themselves for Him. There is a subtle poison that seeps into the soul of every seeker, a whisper so quiet you might mistake it for wisdom itself. It is the voice that says, "You must have the answer, you must appear knowledgeable, you must never admit that you do not know." This is the voice of the ego, the nafs, demanding to be the microphone through which all wisdom flows. You have felt it, haven't you? That tightening in your chest when someone seeks your guidance and you feel the pressure to produce the perfect response. The fear of appearing ignorant or spiritually weak that drives you to speak from your limited intellect instead of seeking inspiration from Al-Hadi, the guide. It is the self-sabotage of one who feels pressured to be the guide, forgetting that there is only one guide. Many of us have fallen into a trap that has plagued seekers for centuries. We confuse ilm, knowledge, with hidayah, guidance. We accumulate Islamic knowledge like trophies, thinking this automatically qualifies us to guide others. We memorize verses and hadith. We study the biographies of the righteous. We attend lectures and read books, all the while building a fortress of information around our hearts that becomes the very barrier preventing divine wisdom from entering. Knowledge without Allah's permission and light becomes a veil. It increases arrogance instead of wisdom. It makes us feel qualified when we are not, prepared when we are empty, wise when we are merely informed. The scholar who has memorized the Quran but whose heart is distant from its meaning speaks with the authority of knowledge but without the fragrance of guidance. But here is the revelation that transforms everything. Divine guidance, tawfiq, flourishes only in the soil of humility and the recognition of our own incapacity. The strength of our beloved Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, was not in his own eloquence. It was in his complete submission, as Allah affirms in Surah An-Najm. He does not speak from his own desire. It is nothing but revelation that is revealed. The condition for Allah to guide your words is simple yet profound. You must remove yourself from the equation. You must reach a state where your desire to be seen as wise is completely surrendered to your desire for truth to be spoken, regardless of whether it comes through you or despite you. This is why the most profound words often come from the most unexpected sources. The simple believer whose heart is clean speaks with more impact than the learned scholar whose heart is polluted with pride. The broken soul who has been emptied of pretense becomes a clearer channel than the confident speaker who has never been humbled. Before your next important conversation, before giving advice to someone who trusts you, try what the mystics call the practice of intentional silence. Instead of rehearsing phrases in your mind, empty it completely. Instead of preparing what you will say, prepare who you will be. Sit in silence and acknowledge your complete dependence on Allah for every word that will emerge from your mouth. Make this sincere supplication: Ya Allah, I do not know. Guide my tongue, purify my intention, and speak through me what is best and most true. Feel the relief that comes with this admission. You are not required to be the source. You are only asked to be the channel. Think of your heart as a vessel already filled with the noise of ego, fear, and personal opinions, has no space to receive the wisdom that comes from Allah. The first step to being filled with divine guidance is the painful but necessary act of emptying yourself. This emptying is not a loss. It is the precondition for receiving something infinitely greater than anything you could manufacture on your own. The ego convinces you that your worth is tied to your words, that your value lies in your ability to provide answers. But Allah invites you to discover a different kind of worth, the worth of being transparent enough to truth that His light shines through you without distortion. This is not the death of your personality. It is the birth of your purpose. You wake before dawn. You perform your ablution with care. You stand in prayer, reciting the verses you have memorized, moving through the motions that have become sacred routine. You fast during Ramadan. You give your zakat. You speak well of others and avoid the major sins that stain the soul. Yet something is missing. Your words still sound empty. The sweetness of faith, halawat al-iman, feels distant. Why doesn't external effort translate into internal clarity? The answer lies in a realm we rarely examine, a dimension of sin so subtle that it operates beneath our conscious awareness. While we focus intensely on the sins of our limbs, what we see, eat, touch, we neglect the sins of the heart that are far more destructive to our spiritual connection. These are the invisible rust that accumulates on the mirror of our souls. The subtle envy, hasad, when someone else receives what we have been asking Allah for. The hidden pride, kibr, that swells when we win an argument or receive praise for our knowledge. The love for people's validation, riya, that creeps into our worship and makes us perform for human applause rather than divine pleasure. The judgment we pass on others while excusing ourselves. The resentment we hold against those who have wronged us. The attachment to outcomes that makes us question Allah's wisdom when things don't unfold as we expect. These sins of the heart are like carbon monoxide, odorless, colorless, but deadly. They poison the atmosphere of the soul without announcing their presence. You may not even recognize them as sins because they feel justified, reasonable, even righteous. But they create a barrier between your heart and the divine that no amount of external worship can penetrate. Ibn al-Qayyim described sins as wounds in the soul. Each sin, especially those of the heart, leaves a dark stain on the mirror of the qalb. When the mirror is stained, it cannot reflect Allah's light. Your words then emerge from this darkness and confusion, even when your intentions appear good on the surface. This is why two people can speak the same words, even quote the same verse of Quran, yet one touches hearts while the other falls flat. The difference is not in the words themselves, but in the purity of the vessel from which they emerge. A clean heart speaks with the authority of truth. A stained heart speaks with the weakness of pretense. The path to purification begins with brutal honesty about the state of your inner world. Throughout your day, especially before speaking or acting, create a micropause and ask yourself with complete honesty, for whom am I doing this? So that my name will be remembered, to prove a point, to feel superior, or purely for the love of Allah and to seek His face. This questioning is not meant to paralyze you, but to purify you. It is a form of spiritual hygiene, a way of washing the heart just as you wash your body. Most of our words and actions are contaminated with multiple intentions. We want to help, yes, but we also want to be seen as helpful. We want to share truth, yes, but we also want to be recognized as knowledgeable. Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, the most truthful, used to place a stone in his mouth to prevent himself from speaking unnecessarily. He did this not from fear of people, but from a deep reverence for Allah, fearing that his tongue might say something that would displease Him. He understood that controlling the tongue was, in reality, guarding the heart. The purification of hidden sins is like peeling an onion. Layer after layer of self-deception, rationalization, and spiritual pride must be removed before you reach the core of sincerity. Each layer you remove brings tears, but also brings clarity. Each false motivation you identify and surrender brings you closer to the state where your words carry divine weight, because they emerge from divine purity. When we purify the hidden sins of the heart, we begin to experience something beautiful. Our words start carrying a different weight, a different sincerity. They become less about us and more about the truth that needs to be spoken. People begin to sense something authentic in our speech, something that penetrates beyond their minds to touch their hearts. The call came at 3 a.m, the diagnosis that changed everything, the business that failed despite your best efforts and most sincere prayers, the child who chose a path that breaks your heart, the friend who betrayed your trust, the door that slammed shut just when you thought Allah was opening it for you. In these moments of profound trial, something happens to your voice. Either it disappears entirely, leaving you silent and withdrawn, convinced that you have nothing worthwhile to say because Allah seems to have nothing worthwhile to give you. Or it becomes bitter, filled with questions that sound like complaints, prayers that sound like accusations, words that carry the weight of disappointment rather than faith. After great trials, you may feel that Allah has abandoned you. Your inner voice becomes cynical, questioning everything you once believed about His mercy and wisdom. Dua seems useless because your previous prayers appear to have been ignored. Words of comfort to others sound hypocritical coming from your mouth because you are the one who needs comfort. How can you guide others toward trust in Allah when your own trust feels shattered? But here is where we often misunderstand sabir, patience. Sabr is not passive, depressed acceptance of suffering. It is not the silence of despair or the resignation of defeat. True sabr is the active restraint of the soul from complaining about Allah's decree while still working to improve the situation. It is the discipline of the heart that prevents bitterness from taking root while still acknowledging pain. We confuse patience with hopeless resignation, but they are opposite states. Resignation says, "Nothing I do matters, so I will do nothing." Patience says, "I do not understand why this is happening, but I will continue to act with faith while I wait for understanding." Listen to this profound truth that will change how you see your trials. Your trial is not punishment meant to silence you. It is a furnace designed to purify your voice. It is in the fire of difficulty that the gold of the soul is separated from the dross of ego and attachment to this world. The most powerful and authentic words are those born not from theory, but from the experience of having been broken and rebuilt by Allah's hand. The voice of a believer who has passed through trial with sabr carries a weight and sincerity that no other voice possesses. It speaks with the authority of experience, not just knowledge. It comforts with the comfort of one who has been comforted, not just one who has read about comfort. Think of every prophet and messenger sent by Allah. Their most powerful moments of speech came not during times of ease, but during times of intense trial. Musa spoke with the authority of one who had been exiled and then called back. Yusuf spoke with the wisdom of one who had been betrayed and then vindicated. Muhammad, peace be upon him, delivered his most transformative messages during the most challenging periods of his mission. Your pain is not disqualifying you from being a voice of guidance. It is qualifying you for a type of guidance that only comes through experience. But there is a condition. The pain must be processed through the filter of faith rather than bitterness. It must be transformed by sabr rather than corrupted by complaint. In the middle of your pain, when everything feels uncertain and Allah's wisdom seems hidden, practice what the wise call gratitude in the storm. Force yourself to find one blessing that still remains and thank Allah for it specifically. Ya Allah, thank you for this roof despite the debt. Ya Allah, thank you for this health despite the loneliness. Ya Allah, thank you for this breath despite this heartbreak. This practice does not deny your pain or minimize your struggle. It realigns your heart's focus, preventing it from being completely hijacked by bitterness. It maintains a connection to divine goodness even when divine wisdom seems absent. Think of the believer's voice like the oud tree, the source of agar wood. It only releases its most precious and valuable fragrance after being wounded. The tree that has never been cut produces no perfume, but the tree that has been skillfully wounded by one who knows its nature produces a scent so beautiful that it becomes more valuable than gold. Your trial is not the end of your voice. It is the source of your most authentic and guided fragrance. When you speak from this place of having been tested and purified, people recognize something different in your words. There is a depth, a genuineness that can only come from someone who has walked through fire and emerged not unburned, but refined. You sit in your room, hands folded, waiting for the answer to descend from heaven like rain. You have made dua for guidance, for direction, for Allah to show you the way forward. And now you wait and wait. Days pass, weeks pass. The silence grows heavier, and with it, your paralysis deepens. This is spiritual stagnation disguised as righteousness. You tell yourself you are practicing tawakkul, trusting in Allah, but what you are actually practicing is a distorted version that leads to inaction rather than inspired action. You have confused trust with passivity, surrender with abdication of responsibility. The fear underneath this false tawakkul is the terror of making the wrong decision, saying the wrong thing, taking the wrong step. So you take no steps at all. You speak no words at all. You make no decisions at all. You wait for an angel to whisper the exact answer in your ear, for a sign so clear that it removes all possibility of error, for a divine intervention so obvious that it requires no faith. But this is not how guidance works. This is not how Allah typically communicates with His servants. This is the fatal confusion between tawakkul, active trust in Allah after doing your part, and tawakkul, lazy, negligent passivity that expects divine intervention without human effort. True tawakkul is beautifully illustrated in the famous saying, "Tie your camel, then trust in Allah." You do not trust that the untied camel will not wander away. You tie the camel because you understand that your effort is part of Allah's system, and then you trust that Allah will protect what you have secured to the best of your ability. When it comes to speech, to giving guidance, to finding the right words in difficult moments, the same principle applies. You do not wait for perfection to descend upon you. You do not postpone speaking until you feel completely ready. You prepare as best you can, purify your intention as much as you are able, and then you step forward in faith, trusting that Allah will guide your words as you speak them. Here is the revelation that changes everything. Allah's guidance rarely comes before action. It comes through action. You take the first imperfect step, trusting in Him, and it is in that movement that He clarifies the next step. Inspiration does not visit those who are standing still. It accompanies those who are moving for His cause. Think about learning to drive. You do not become a skilled driver by sitting in a parked car, reading the manual, waiting until you feel completely confident. You become a skilled driver by starting the engine, putting the car in motion, and learning to adjust as you go. Skill develops through practice, through making small mistakes and correcting them, through building confidence 1 mile at a time. The same is true for divinely guided speech. You do not develop it by waiting in silence until you feel worthy of speaking. You develop it by beginning to speak with the right intention, making small mistakes and learning from them, building sensitivity to divine guidance 1 conversation at a time. Identify the smallest, most manageable action you can take in the direction you seek. Writing the first draft of that difficult email, making the phone call, and simply saying, "Hello, I've been thinking about our conversation." Starting the difficult conversation with, "I've been praying about something, and I feel we need to talk." Execute this small act with the clear intention that it is your tying of the camel, your part of the equation, and then surrender the outcome completely to Allah. Do not attach your sense of success to the immediate results. Attach it to your willingness to take the step in faith. Remember the powerful lesson of Maryam, peace be upon her, in Surah Maryam. In her weakest state, having just given birth alone in the wilderness, exhausted and vulnerable, Allah commanded her, "And shake toward you the trunk of the palm tree. It will drop upon you ripe, fresh dates." Could Allah not have made the dates fall by themselves? Could He not have sent angels to feed her? Could He not have provided for her without requiring any effort on her part? Absolutely. But He chose to teach a universal lesson. You must make your movement, however small, however symbolic it may be. Her act of shaking the tree was not what caused the dates to fall. Her weak hands could never have shaken dates from a palm tree. But her action was the human trigger that unlocked divine provision. It was her demonstration of faith in motion rather than faith in paralysis. Similarly, your willingness to speak, even imperfectly, even with trembling voice, even when you do not feel ready, this is your shaking of the tree. The impact of your words, the hearts that are touched, the guidance that flows through you, this is Allah's dates falling from the tree. The key is in the balance, but you act knowing that the outcome is entirely in Allah's hands. But you speak knowing that the effect of your words is by His permission alone. But you prepare knowing that your preparation is merely the creation of space for His guidance to flow. This is true tawakkul, not the paralysis of waiting for magic, but the movement of faith that creates the conditions for miracles. There is a voice inside you that speaks without words, a knowing that arrives without reasoning, a clarity that emerges from silence rather than analysis. You have felt it. In the middle of a conversation, suddenly you know what needs to be said, though you had not planned those words. In a moment of decision, you sense the right path before you can explain why it is right. In times of confusion, a certainty settles in your heart that has nothing to do with the evidence your mind has gathered. But then the second voice arrives, the voice of doubt, of overthinking, of fear about what others will think. That feeling is just imagination, it whispers. You cannot trust intuition. You need proof, logic, rational justification. So you silence the first voice, the voice of knowing, and speak instead from the second voice, the voice of analysis, and your words lose their power. This is the tragedy of suppressing firasa, the spiritual perception that Allah grants to the hearts of those who have drawn close to Him. Firasa is not mysticism or fortune-telling. It is not the New Age concept of intuition that seeks to bypass divine guidance. It is, according to our tradition, a type of light that Allah casts into the heart of His pious servant as a result of their closeness, sincerity, and purification. The Prophet, peace be upon him, said, "Beware of the believer's insight, for he sees with the light of Allah." This is firasa, the ability to perceive truth not through the normal channels of reasoning, but through a direct connection between a purified heart and divine knowledge. Your firasa is one of the most intimate ways Allah guides your words and actions. When your heart is clean, when your intentions are pure, when you have spent time in His presence through worship and remembrance, He grants you access to a type of knowing that transcends what your mind can figure out alone. But firasa only functions when the heart is clean of two specific pollutants. First, the noise of sin. Every act of disobedience creates static in the spiritual receiver of your heart. Like trying to tune into a radio station while driving through a storm, the signal becomes weak and distorted when the atmosphere is polluted. Second, the arrogance of intellect. When you become convinced that your rational mind is the only reliable source of knowledge, you close yourself off to other forms of divine communication. Intellect is a gift, but it is not the only gift. When it becomes proud, it rejects information that does not come through its approved channels. The more you purify your heart through tawbah, through dhikr, through acts of service and surrender, the clearer this inner signal becomes. The more you humble your intellect and acknowledge its limitations, the more space you create for other forms of knowing to emerge. But here is what makes this different from mere impulse or wishful thinking. True firasa leads to peace and clarity, even when it guides you toward difficult truths or challenging actions. False inspiration, the kind that comes from ego or shaitan's whispers, leads to anxiety, confusion, and inner conflict. Firasa feels like coming home to yourself. It aligns with what you know to be true about Allah's nature, His mercy, His wisdom, His love for justice and beauty and truth. It never contradicts the guidance of Quran and Sunnah, though it may reveal applications of that guidance that you had not considered before. When you feel a strong inner knowing, especially about what to say in a difficult situation, do not dismiss it immediately, but do not follow it blindly either. Take it to your prayer. Perform 2 units of prayer and say, "Ya Allah, if this perception comes from you, strengthen it in my heart and make the path clear. And if it is a whisper from my ego or from shaitan, remove it from me and purify me from it." Use prayer as your filter. If the feeling grows stronger and clearer through prayer, if it brings peace rather than anxiety, if it aligns with the divine guidance rather than contradicting it, then trust it. Act on it. Speak from it. Think of your heart as a high-precision navigation instrument. Sin and ego are like magnetic interference that makes the needle spin uncontrollably, pointing in random directions. Tazkiyah and dhikr are the process of removing that interference, recalibrating the instrument so it can function as it was designed to function. When your heart is properly calibrated, it does not give you a detailed map of the future, but it points firmly toward the right direction in each moment, and the right words flow naturally in that direction. This is why the righteous predecessors would say that the believer's heart is like a compass that always points toward Allah's pleasure. When your heart is aligned with His pleasure, your words become aligned as well. You speak not from calculation or manipulation, but from a deep knowing of what needs to be said. The voice of Farasa is quiet but unmistakable. It does not shout over the noise of your thoughts. It waits for the silence between thoughts. It speaks in the pause before you speak. It emerges in the space you create through presence, through attention, through the willingness to receive rather than just transmit. Learning to recognize and trust this voice is one of the most practical skills a believer can develop. It transforms you from someone who speaks from preparation and anxiety into someone who speaks from presence and guidance. Your words begin to carry a different quality, not just information, but transformation. Not just content, but blessing. We have traveled together through the sacred landscape of speech, from the noise of ego to the whisper of divine guidance. We have explored the silent battle that rages behind every word, the invisible rust that accumulates on the mirror of the heart, the furnace of trial that purifies authentic voice, the balance between action and surrender, and the quiet wisdom that emerges from a purified heart. This journey we have taken together is not theoretical. It is the actual path that every believer must walk who wishes to become more than just someone who speaks, but someone through whom truth speaks. It is the transformation from being a source of words to becoming a channel for wisdom, from generating noise to transmitting light. The path is clear, though it is not easy. Empty the ego that demands to be heard. Purify the heart of hidden sins that block divine light. Transform trials into refinement rather than bitterness. Balance effort with surrender. Tune the spiritual receiver of your heart to divine frequency. Allah promises us in His book, "And whoever fears Allah, He will make for him a way out and will provide for him from where he does not expect." This way out, this makhraj, is not just financial or circumstantial. It is an exit from confusion, the right word at the right moment, an unexpected solution that emerges through your mouth, though you know it did not originate in your mind. It is the manifestation of His guidance flowing through a heart that has been polished enough to reflect His light without distortion. Ibn al-Qayyim beautifully described the final stage of this journey. He wrote that as the servant draws near to Allah through voluntary acts of worship, through consistent surrender, through the patient purification of the heart, he reaches the state described in the sacred hadith, where Allah says, "I become the hearing with which he hears, the sight with which he sees, the hand with which he grasps, and the foot with which he walks, and by extension, the tongue with which he speaks." This is not the loss of your personality or the death of your individuality. This is the birth of your true purpose. It is not that you disappear, but that you become so aligned with divine will that your actions and words become natural expressions of divine guidance. You remain yourself, but yourself in service to something infinitely greater than yourself. This is the pinnacle of the journey, not losing your identity, but discovering your identity as a servant whose greatest honor is to be used by his Lord. Your voice becomes valuable, not because it is your voice, but because it has become transparent enough to divine truth that Allah's guidance flows through it as naturally as water flows through a clear stream. The struggles you have experienced with words, the moments of feeling tongue-tied when wisdom was needed most, the fear that you have nothing valuable to offer, these were not signs of failure. They were invitations. Invitations to discover that the voice you have been seeking was never your voice alone. It was always meant to be a collaboration between your willingness and His guidance. Today, as we conclude this reflection together, I leave you with a question that has the power to transform not just how you speak, but how you live. Which veil of your heart are you willing to remove today? Which layer of ego, which hidden sin, Which false notion about your own adequacy are you ready to surrender? The guidance you seek is not in some distant future when you finally feel ready. It is on the other side of your next act of sincere surrender. It is waiting in the silence between your thoughts, in the pause before you speak, in the space you create, when you empty yourself of the need to be impressive and fill yourself instead with the desire to be truthful. What is the first step you will take to polish the mirror of your soul so that your words, finally, reflect His light rather than your own shadows? The answer to that question is not just the beginning of better speech. It is the beginning of a life lived in conscious partnership with the divine, where every word becomes a form of worship, every conversation becomes an opportunity for guidance to flow, and every moment of silence becomes a preparation for the next divine whisper to emerge through you. This is the mark of those who are chosen, not because they were born special, but because they chose to become vessels clean enough to carry sacred water to thirsty hearts. The choice, as always, is yours. The invitation as always is open. The guidance, as always, is waiting for you to create the space to receive it. Till we meet again in this blessed space of reflection, may your words be guided, your heart be purified, and your silence be filled with the presence of the One who speaks through those who have learned to listen.